filling the nation's capital. Did the third-ranking Republican in Congress once speak to a white nationalist organization founded by former Ku Klux Klan grandwizard David Duke? That question will be on the minds of members of Congress this week when they begin reconvening in Washington after their Christmas recess. Steve Scalise was a Louisiana state representative on the rise back in 2002 when he reportedly addressed the European American Unity and Rights Conference. He was invited by a longtime political advisor to Duke. After initial reports broke last week, Scalise said he didn't remember addressing the group, but said in a prepared statement that it was, quote, a mistake I regret, which sounds like he was there. But then that political advisor, who initially told the Washington Post that Scalise was there, backtracked and said that Scalise addressed a civic association. As the contradictory statements are parsed, Republicans can ill afford the Scalise situation given their lack of recent success in making inroads in the minority community. I've got a lot of questions. And who better to ask about Congressman Scalise's appearance than David Duke himself? So, 2002, did Steve Scalise speak to the group that you founded?
Frankly, I'm not sure. I was in Russia at the time doing research for my doctoral dissertation. I've since got a PhD. And I was in Moscow, in fact, in the National Archives almost every day. I did a telephone hookup. And by the way, we got to make something really clear here. You know, they say former Klan leader or whatever. This was 37 years ago in my life, okay? And
but true. I mean, well, admittedly, that's over a long time period, but true.
It's also true that Robert Byrd was in the Klan. But a lot of people were friends of Robert Byrd, right, in the Senate, Democrats and Republicans. It's really a biased situation because I denounce, first of all, I was never violent, but I denounced even then violence. I left it because I didn't want to be associated with that kind of taint. I've never supported white supremacism. You got to read about it in the paper. This wasn't a hate group. In fact, the European American Unity and Rights Organization was an organization in its charter dedicated to true civil rights and stopping discrimination against people as the best qualified people should be gauged, and that every people have the right to preserve their heritage, their freedom, and their values.
You founded Euro.
Yeah, I did found
Euro. Okay, this is a huge story. It's a nationwide kerfuffle now. So I have to believe common sense would tell me, David, that as the story has broken, you've picked up the phone or you've gotten online and you've said to the people with whom you were involved in that group, hey, what's the deal? So what's the deal?
I certainly did, and I've got conflicting reports. One person said that he was a no-show, that he was scheduled to come. Other person said that he was, said that he did come. I mean, I just don't know what the truth is. I think that it seems that Mr. Scalise thinks that he may have. That's why he's covering.
Why else would he say that he regrets it?
He's covering himself. But we've got to go to a deeper aspect of this, and the fact that if any United States Congress went to a group called La Raza Unida, and presidents have done that too, which is the United Race, which is an activist advocacy group for the interests of Mexican Americans and Latino Americans. If that was happened, nobody would have a blink of an eye.
Well, you would.
Well,
and you beef about that in the same way that people are beefing about this.
Actually, I don't, sir. The fact is, I believe that every people has a right to work for their interests, to preserve their heritage. In fact, I believe every people on earth have that right. I believe that every nation and every people has a right to be free and independent. Now, that's what I preach every day. You can hear it on my radio show. You can see it on my website, my books, my writings. But it goes beyond that. Of course, if he would have gone to an African-American advocacy group who's concerned about African-Americans, like the NAACP, Republicans, Democrats go to that, no problem. If he'd have gone to a Jewish advocacy group, even advocacy for a foreign country, which is Israel, and the interests of the Jewish people, no problem. But he came to a European organization, big problem. And don't forget, he was an elected official. So what is America all about? Aren't we supposed to believe that if you're an elected official, when you serve in Congress, you're representing all the people of your district, not the people just you voted for, not the people you agree with. Aren't you supposed to listen to people?
Just to close the loop on what you know of Scalise and the meeting, Eric Erickson makes, I think, a real good point. If you come to a David Duke event, you pretty much remember you were there.
Well, look, certainly, as far as the media is concerned, it's a very controversial group. In Louisiana, I got 65% of the European American vote. In that district that he represents, I received 60% of the vote, all his constituents, 60% of the vote to be their governor and to be their United States senator. So maybe the national media, which is I consider to be very racist, against European Americans, and I think that they have really caused the incitement of African Americans against European Americans, and I also think that they've also facilitated European Americans being angry at African Americans.
But
I think the violence
totally separate issue.
No, it's not a separate issue.
I'm simply trying to find out, was the man there? I can't understand why there would be such confusion.
I'm telling you.
I'm certainly going to remember. I'm going to remember. Just let me finish this.
Okay.
I'm certainly going to remember the day that David Duke was on my television program. I would think that he would remember whether he addressed
I wasn't even there.
conference.
I was in Moscow over the telephone, and if he did come, he would have come at a different time. So here's the situation. I was not his supporter. He was not my supporter. I did not contribute to him. He did not contribute to me, okay? He was not a member of my organization. He was an early young representative who just got elected in Louisiana, and he was pushing a tax program, and he was coming to constituents. And again, I believe that every elected official has a responsibility to hear out people who are right-wing, left-wing.
No matter their viewpoint.
Of course.
Help me stay focused on this incident.
Yeah, I am.
You said this week that if he's crucified, I think that was your word choice, then you're going to name names. What are we talking about?
I would name names of any Democrat, and I know some Democrats and Republicans in the House of Representatives who tried, in fact, urged me to support them legally. In fact, I did. The governor of the state of Louisiana, Mr. Foster, wanted my support.
In other words, you're saying there are members of Congress today who have relationships with you.
Have had relationships.
But they choose to keep those private.
And that's fine.
And you honor that.
And I respect somebody's privacy.
But you'll call them out.
But I would call them out if they be hypocritical.
New David Duke was in the last 3 years, your open letter to the world, and you go back and you talk about World War II and you talk about atrocities on both sides of the aisle, but you never use the H word. You never use Holocaust. I don't want to get into this whole debate today, but you raised it. Do you believe in the Holocaust?
Well, I say...
Does the new David Duke in 2015 believe that the Holocaust occurred?
Well, of course, I believe there were terrible atrocities.
No, but I want you to say it differently.
Okay.
I want you to say the Holocaust occurred.
I don't care what you call it, but with the point I make...
I want to hear you say it.
Okay, I believe in the quote, Holocaust. But let me tell you something. Why is it that there's no movies, very little attention about the greatest Holocaust in the history of the world, which was the Holocaust against Christians by the Soviet communism? And that's my point, is that we have a controlled media today that talks about the Holocaust, but they don't talk about the death and destruction of tens of millions of Christians.
I want to talk about everything.
Which was bigger than...
I want to talk about everything, which is why you're here.
My book is The Secret Behind Communism, and it deals with that issue, and you can write to me at davidduke.com and find out about it.
Okay.